Hi, everybody. Today we're joined by Matt Cooke from Respawn. He's joined us for our very first episode of Ask the Dev, where we put a spotlight on the developers behind the games that we love to play and photograph. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Thanks very much for having me.
No problem. It's great to have you. Great to have you. So we put together a selection of questions from us. We've asked the community some questions and popped them in there as well. So without further ado, let's crack on. So lots of people within the gaming community and virtual photography community are looking to get into the games industry. So what made you decide to work in the games industry, and how did working at Respawn come about?
Yeah, so for me, it's kind of a long story. I've always been an avid gamer as a child. It was one of my early passions, starting with Commodore 64 and moving up through all the console generations. However, didn't really consider games as a profession, and I went for an even less likely profession in the end, which was film. I worked as a cinematographer for 10 years in the film industry. So I actually joined the game industry as a second career at age 35. So kind of an anomaly there. I think a lot of people who join games start fairly young. It's their kind of ultimate passion.
Yeah, they do,
They kind of go straight into it. For me, I had 10 years in the film industry, lighting, but in a different and live action context. Gradually, during that time, just before I moved into the game industry, I just got really enamored with CG and CG lighting. The more we were doing kind of VFX shoots, I was more interested in that, and I started tinkering at home, seeing how this stuff was put together. I also used it, learning Maya as a way to previs bigger lighting setups for commercials, because obviously you have to determine how you want to light things and order equipment before you actually get on set, which can be quite stressful when the budgets get big. So I was doing a fair bit of previs at home, and I started to get more and more just caught up in the CG lighting side of things. And as I was playing games, I started to notice that there was a role called a lighting artist. And it hasn't been around for too long, I don't think. I started noticing that role pop up probably just 1 or 2 years before I joined the industry, and I don't think there were too many around.
Yeah.
And I reached out to the kind of few that were about to get advice, about how the game industry works, because I didn't really know much about it. I just spent time tinkering with Unity to understand how game engines worked, and started thinking a bit more about how games were put together. And eventually I just bit the bullet and started applying for jobs. I got a lot of rejections at first, because I don't think people really knew where I was coming from. So I downloaded Unreal Engine and relit some asset store content. That was kind of right at the inception of the asset store. And then I was able to put a mini portfolio together, and I convinced Splash Damage to hire me back in the UK, which was, I wasn't really sure what to expect. I was used to working on set as a freelancer with a lot of kind of freedom. I was a little bit concerned about the office environment and confines, and honestly, all of those fears were unfounded. Working at Splash Damage was a great opportunity, where I worked on the Gears of War franchise.
Oh, yeah. Oh, pretty good.
And then I moved over to the US to work at Ready at Dawn on the Lone Echo series. And then I managed to get lucky and join Respawn as a senior lighting artist. Within a year into the project, they needed a lead. So I was fortunate enough to be chosen in that position.
And you've never looked back?
No.
So can you tell us a bit more about the role of a lead lighting artist? You touched on a little bit there where you've learned some bits and pieces. Did you have to kind of learn a bit about programming? You mentioned Unity and Unreal Engine 5. Is that knowledge you had? Is that vital to the role? What does your role generally entail?
It can be quite broad. I mean, I think the best thing is to describe the role of a lighting artist, which really it goes on a scale of very art-based to very technical. And I don't think there's a one-shoe-fits-all mold for which you have to be. We have members of the lighting team that aren't very technical and don't know much about kind of scripting or anything like that. And we have others who are very technical. I land somewhere in the middle. I think I lean more towards the art side of things, but I do like to get my hands into some of the technical stuff, but just more so I understand how it works than actually doing any implementation myself. I don't really have the skill set to do that. So a lighting artist is basically responsible for setting the mood, the atmosphere, and lighting of a given section of the game and the game cinematics. Some studios do dedicated cinematic lighting as a separate department, and others like Respawn, we handle it all. That's my preferred methodology. I like lighting artists to be able to light the cinematics in the area of the world that they've lit in an ideal circumstance. It doesn't always work out that way because of scheduling, but ultimately, I prefer that method. And on top of that,
how early on do you come on in the process? So obviously there's character models and bits and pieces. So for those who don't know the different processes and steps it takes, when do you come on to start lighting it? What's already being done, or are you on a really early stage?
I think it really depends on the studio and the project. So if you're in a studio that's rolling on from one game to the next, you're more than likely going to be there from the beginning, mostly doing R&D, learning the new tools or helping develop new tools, setting benchmarks and performance goals. But if you're in a new team that's forming, you're probably going to be brought on a little bit later. So a new team building from scratch will probably start with design and narrative and code and slowly start building up. And lighting is one of the more downstream areas of game development. So in theory, we can start a little bit later. In practice, it's good to be on there from the beginning because there's always technical hurdles and artistic art directional goals to start shooting for early on.
Yeah. And do you need any qualifications for your role, or is it self-taught? I mean, you said when you were going for the roles, you got your lot of rejections, you built your portfolio together. Does it require any qualifications, or is it down to experience and background in your personal experience?
In my experience, it's a little bit mixed because I don't think, say, for example, when I'm looking to hire someone, anything that they've got to offer is always, it's an added bonus. So if someone's got a master's degree or a bachelor's degree in computer science or photography or art, whatever it may be, I think that's going to benefit that person because, I think further education's very valuable in developing your own skills, so your own communication, your ability to work to deadlines and to agendas and goals. But that being said, I don't think it's a barrier not having any of those qualifications. I think the most important thing is that you understand the medium, you understand how video games are made, you understand photography and lighting, specifically for our discipline. So I would say it's not a barrier. It's a benefit potentially. And I think if you're planning to work more internationally, like myself, I moved from the UK to the US. It was a prerequisite for visa consideration. So if you ever plan on getting into the games industry and perhaps moving internationally, that might be something that would benefit you. But like I said, I wouldn't say it's a prerequisite.
Well, okay, it's good to know. So your latest game is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. You probably noticed I posted loads of pictures.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Everybody's posting loads of pictures. So it's got amazing lighting in it and lighting effects in it in the game. And obviously in the photo mode, you can play around with the lighting. Does the lighting team have an input into the 3-point light system or EM, or is that dealt with completely separate? They call on your expertise in those sorts of things, or is it just left to another department completely?
I think a lot of this stuff is very collaborative. The photo mode itself, I would say that the vast majority of the credit to the photo mode will go to the code and UI teams. The photo mode is something that comes in fairly late because we need to know what the game can render, what the performance is. We also need to know the UI needs to be in place really before it becomes fully functional. So yeah, we get asked about, can you test this out? What do you think about if we do such and such? But I would say the ownership on Survivor was probably more on the UI code side of things, with us just being there for giving input and testing it out and making sure that it works. One example of a good collaboration was the photo filters.
Yeah,
we have a different color pipeline in the engine from the previous game, so none of the old photo filters worked. So I collaborated with Danish, who's a principal UI artist, and with Dylan, who's a lead rendering engineer.
Yeah.
And I basically helped facilitate the process to allow to unlock that for them, because Danish, he had the bandwidth to do the actual looks, to create the looks in DaVinci Resolve. Yeah. Where I didn't at that point in time, and the lighting team was very, very busy, knees deep in cinematic lighting and level lighting. But we needed that code support to implement the color pipeline specifically for the photo mode as well, to make those photo filters work. So it required that kind of collaboration, understanding what was wanted, how to achieve it, and then in this case, the lighting team wasn't involved in actually the content creation.
Yeah, I mean, the filters in this one, there's a lot less filters than the first game, but I think all the filters, they're really good filters for personal use. There's subtle differences. They're not really heavy filters, and obviously the intensity can change. So the filters in this game are really, really good. I think they are a little step up from the last one. Less is more in some respects in that. So good work on those. So the next question was going to be what goes into building a photo mode. We touched on the fact that it's done by maybe the UI team, done by other teams, and you collaborate. And it's generally done later on because you need everything else in place. Mm-hmm. So we've answered that one already. So virtual photography, obviously you put a photo mode in your game. Mm-hmm. Is virtual photography something that the studio is actively aware of and they're putting them in there for that reason? Or is it following a trend of other games putting them in? What's the feeling around virtual photography at the studio? Is it something that they're actively looking to facilitate?
Yeah, I would say so. I think perhaps historically it's one of those features that everybody has, so it's kind of something you need to have. But from our perspective, the team has always been very active in sharing our work across the team. So even before photo mode, we would share screenshots of areas or characters, because in the team we're also fans of the franchise too. So it's very exciting to see new work come online. So I'd say it has its roots in that, and the fact that we have been sharing screenshots throughout. So I think photo mode was important. It was something that we were passionate about getting in the game on launch as well, because I think it's one of those things that's been really, you can see from being on social media and posting loads of photos, you've got lots of devs commenting and liking, because, we're so happy to see players enjoying the game and people rolling their sleeves up and finding new things that we hadn't even seen. Some of the photos that I've seen, I would never have dreamed of coming up with, from a developer perspective. So, I would say we're very passionate about it, and everyone's just thoroughly enjoyed seeing it come to life.
Yeah, and it shows. I mean, the amount of interaction from the studio and devs, we liking, retweeting, and everything is really nice to see, and kind of leads on to our next question. So, obviously, with the virtual photography, a lot of people get tagged. People are starting to, rather than tag the studios, tag the developers to show our appreciation for your work and obviously see what you think of it as well. Is that something which developers like, or is it sometimes a bit too much? Because I think in virtual photography, it can become a little bit of a trend to tag everybody from a dev. So they look for a respawn, look for everybody involved in a respawn, and then tag everybody. Is it something you guys like? Does it get a bit much?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. Personally, I really like it because it lets me see what people are doing, and I find it fascinating. We're very invested in the game, so seeing kind of creative works that have come out of something we've poured, thousands of hours into creating, it's very satisfying. It may be that depends on different people's tolerance for social media, how much time they want to spend on it. I tend to not be on that much. So I'll just see like a list of tags and likes, and I'll quickly go through them. And it's nice. It's almost like a digest of what's been happening in photo mode in Jedi Survivor, which if I was just scrolling and looking on social media, I might not necessarily be searching for. So personally, I like it. I think it's great to be tagged. Others may disagree. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I suppose for the studio, it's free marketing, isn't it? You know, as much as the games are marketed in the stores and things like that, the whole virtual photography community, if people are playing that game and taking those pictures and flooding social media with the pictures, it's a benefit, isn't it? It's free publishing and getting your game out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seeing the work people capture in the game on social media, I think it raises awareness for the game, and that's never a bad thing.
Exactly, and it really highlights the work that's gone into as well. We've touched on the role that you've had in the game. A photo mode really highlights everything in the game. So if you're playing a game, it can look good, the lighting can be good. But in a photo mode, if you can zoom in, you can go anywhere.
Yeah.
And in Jedi Survivor, the quality is just throughout, whether that's playing the game or on photo mode, everything is on point. I believe in some photo modes, it does show up where shortcuts are made or things that we're not necessarily meant to see, but everything in the Survivor one is literally spot on. So really, really well done on the photo mode in that game. So move on to your thoughts then. So what games do you look at and think, wow, they really nailed the lighting in that? I think, how did they do that? Or maybe we should try that next time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it happens a lot, and it evolves over time because every year, every console generation, particularly towards the end of console generations, you start seeing people really pushing the technology, which also allows a lot more creative and artistic freedom. So what may be true now, or what may have been true in the past, maybe isn't as mind-blowing to me now because of just pure time passing. But I look at games like The Last of Us. I've always been a huge fan. Every iteration of that game, I think they were pushing boundaries in soft lighting and kind of ambient atmospheric lighting, not using direct light sources, not something many games do or can do because of the context. And I think that was pretty new. They were one of the first, maybe the first, I'm not sure, games to introduce real kind of ambient soft shadowing. And for me, that grounded everything and gave things a more kind of cinematic look, if you will. So that was a huge influence on me, seeing the original Last of Us, and they continue to keep going with that. And then recently, probably Stray. I really loved how Stray looked. I thought that was a real striking, bold kind of color palette they were using. And every moment of playing that game was one where I just wanted to take screenshots and think about how they did it using very large attenuation light sources, and they were using very different technology to us, but very, very interesting to kind of really get in there with the camera and on zoom to really poke around and see what was happening.
Yeah, and I suppose for console players there is no photo mode, so you have to get a little bit creative.
Yeah,
but the lighting in both those games is brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I took a lot of screenshots just in the PS Share, actually, now that I'm thinking of it. And I got a whole folder of reference from that game because, stunning.
And do you ever reach out to the people who do your role in those studios to ask them questions about what they've done, or do you just admire it from afar? And
it varies. I mean, I do know various lighting artists from different studios. I think there's kind of barriers about what you can share. We don't really share technology secrets. There's a lot of
top secrets
restrictions on that, but I think as a community, we're pretty talkative. I've met a lot of lighting artists socially and different like E3, for example, GDC, and on Facebook there's various groups where there are lighting artists lurking. So we do chat and share tips, and I think ArtStation as well. Twitter, there's lots of people posting on Twitter, lighting artists, relighting different scenes. I think a lot of the conversation for lighting artists comes around more personal work and rather than the actual production work, just because of, you as an artist working in a studio, you want to make sure you don't spoil anything for anyone.
Yeah, you've got to be careful, haven't you? And I have seen a lot of devs lately sharing their art station and bits and pieces. It's really good to see people sharing their work on social media now. Really good.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And I think awareness of different lighting artists has come about through social media. There's finding recruiting talent. I think the advent of ArtStation and Twitter and people relighting scenes has really helped visibility for artists and their portfolios.
That's really good, isn't it? So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Matt. What do you do? Obviously at work, you're lighting games and working on the lighting in the games. Mm-hmm. What do you like to do in your downtime?
That's a good question. I'm married and I have a child, so I don't have a huge amount of personal time.
I feel you there. Yeah.
So spending a lot of time with my wife and son, trying to get outside as much as we can, hiking and visiting as much as we can in California, which it's a beautiful place. So we try and see as much as we can. Other than that, I'm an avid reader. And I love films and games, so I play a lot of video games when I can, and watch as many films as I can. That's reduced a lot, in recent years since having a son, because of the amount of time the screen's on is far reduced, and I don't watch or play anything while he's awake. So my hours are limited in that sense.
So, what genres of films and books are you into then? Or are you anything?
Pretty much anything. With films, I tend to be leaning slightly more towards slightly art house type films, but not always. I go to the cinema and watch the big blockbusters as well. I'll watch anything, and generally I like most things, even stuff that's bad. I can see I can see good in it. I think it's always worth watching as much as you can. With games, I like narrative single player games the most, so like our game and like the Uncharted's and such. With books, it really varies year by year. I go through various phases and going from kind of classic literature. Now I'm currently into more fantasy stuff, so it really changes over time.
Yeah, no, it's good to have a wide variation.
Keep an open mind,
Exactly, it's good to keep an open mind. So we've touched on a little bit of Jedi Survivor. What's been the most rewarding part of working on it? Obviously, now it's out. We talked about seeing the virtual photography. The game's finished. It's out in the open. What's the most rewarding part for you of working on a game?
I think it's probably been my favorite development I've ever been involved with. I think we have a really great team. They're very open-minded and positive. There isn't too many egos. There's not many people who are very defensive, which you can find. I would say we've got an excellent team in that standpoint. So it's been very rewarding to just collaborate with the members of the Respawn team, because it's just they're all such a joy to work with. It's also been really rewarding building a lighting team, and the team we have is really stellar. So it's been a real privilege actually working with the team we have in the lighting department. So kind of being there from the point pretty early on in production all the way through to the end, seeing the game evolve and really come to life has been great. It's also been really fun playing the game throughout production. And I know that might sound strange, but a lot of the time it's not fun playing games you're working on. They can be quite early in production. They can seem pretty broken, and you're playing just blocky layout levels. And Jedi Survivor's constantly been fun throughout production. So that's been quite rewarding to actually be just testing the game out and reviewing content and just playing it and actually still enjoying it throughout the whole of production. There's been a new experience for me, and it's been really, really fun.
And it shows, the people I've spoken to, their reactions on social media and everywhere, people are really enjoying playing it. There's something about the game that is just so enjoyable. I don't think you have to be a Star Wars fan. Like, it's something just hook you and drag you in. I'm on playthrough number 2 already. I'm almost on number 3, and I'll probably go again. There's something about it that just wants you to play it really a lot of your time.
It's been pretty fun watching streamers play as well, actually, which is not something I would really experienced before in other games. So that, I think, has also been rewarding, and looking at the reactions from members of our team watching streamers as well has been quite unique. Yeah, no, it's really, really, really good. So we've got a last question, which goes a bit more into your role, a bit more technical again. So does the lighting team have a go-to setup when lighting a scene? You know, what's the baseline setup starting point, and how does it evolve from there? Yeah, I would say no. Generally, we go in and it's a kind of organic process where we've discussed amongst ourselves and with the art directors and the designers and the environment artists and the concept artists the intent of the scene. And we usually approach the beginning of the process as a somewhat blue sky blank canvas, you know, so we try and iterate on different looks. Kobo is a good example where it has multiple visits to the planet and they all have different lighting looks each visit. So that wasn't the initial intent. We just started playing around with different ideas and we liked a few of them, and we thought, you know, wouldn't it be good to vary it up, because it is a hub. You do revisit it multiple times, and to give it a little bit more dimension.
And it really works. It really works. You think having so many different environments and lighting and that kind of thing, it wouldn't work, but it just does. There are subtle differences. Obviously, there's a greener area, fogged area. My own personal favourite, the observatory. Absolutely brilliant. I love the lighting up there. I spent a lot of time there in photo mode. So there's no go-to. It's just, let's get in a room, let's talk about it, let's see it work.
The closest thing to a go-to would be every level apart from Coruscant and maybe the Novagoran. They do start with, you know, a sky and a sun and an atmosphere. So that's usually our starting point, would be, what's the sun direction? What kind of weather is it? What does the sky look like? Is it foggy? Is it hazy? Is it clear? Those are probably that's how we start approaching most levels. We also have to consider design as well as just the kind of aesthetic and the mood, because we want the player to not be lost as much as possible. We want to be able to guide the eye, guide the player. So we have to consider those things as we start setting up the lighting of the level. But other than that, really, we're looking at reference, concept, and just talking, and it's a really iterative, evolving process. So we definitely don't have any templates where we just kind of plonk it in and start from that point. But we're not starting entirely from scratch. We do have tools, and we do have features that we do rely on heavily as a kind of base for the beginning of a level.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting to hear. Well, thanks, Matt. That's the last question. It's been really good getting to know a little bit more about your role and a little bit more about you. Thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, thank you.
Tell from our interactions on Twitter, everybody's Twitter, we love the game. So please do pass on our congratulations to the team. They have nailed it, and we already want the next game. So
thank you very much.
If you can hurry that along a bit, that would be absolutely brilliant. Really stellar work. Thanks for letting us talk to you today. It's been very much appreciated. And have a good rest of your day.
Thank you very much. And I just want to add, a big thanks to the virtual photography community, because it's been really wonderful for us to see the level of engagement that we've had, and some of the stuff that's come out. It's been really stunning and quite surprising as well. So, been my pleasure talking with you, and, we appreciate seeing all this stuff. So, please keep it coming.
We certainly will. Is it tempted you to do a bit more virtual photography yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a dabbler anyway. Maybe, I take a lot of screenshots as reference. And I think seeing the level of engagement with the photo mode of our game has definitely got me more inclined to delve into it a little bit more and think about the tool set that's provided. It's funny because my background is cinematography and photography. I'm an avid photographer as well. But when in the photo modes in games, I haven't really, until recently, I hadn't really analyzed and dissected the tool sets that are available to you in different games. I've treated it more as a way of gathering reference images or just a catalog of, nice shots. Whereas now, seeing a lot of the work that's been done by the community on Survivor, I'm seeing a lot of creativity there. So it's definitely something I've been a little bit, it's given me a little bit of an itch to get into. At the same time, I occasionally feels like work as well, So it is nice to try and get that disconnect and just play a game as well because I tend to analyze stuff. Once I stop the camera, I'm going to start analyzing it and picking it apart as well. So I have that slight barrier. But yes, I would say definitely it's been eye-opening seeing what people can create, and it's quite inspiring.
We'll be sure to share a lot more. Don't worry.
Thanks.
But yeah, thanks for your time. Thank you very much, Matt.
You're welcome.